Okay, so for everybody who isn't watching and you're listening today as our first offsite podcast that we've ever done. And one of the only people I would do an offsite and travel the world for would be Natalka Falcomer, who is joining us today. She is the Chief Real Estate Officer. I think I said that to you. It's
you said it right.
Is that you're the only chief real estate officer in the whole industry?
Because
I think she made that up. But anyway, for Ojo Canada.
Yes.
And we know each other from Chestnut Park, where she was an executive vice president. You are a lawyer by trade.
I am.
And anyway, her CV is so impressive. I am honored to have you on. I'm honored to have you as a friend. And we've been dying to, I feel like one of those people who has a show and they were like trying to book that really big celebrity and they didn't have time. And I finally got her, so she's here. So thank you.
Well, absolutely, and it's a pleasure to be here. I'm going to plug Rachel. The reason why I'm such good friends with Rachel is because she also bought and sold homes for me, because she knows her stuff. So if you're tuning in, this is going to be a place that, frankly, I think Rachel should just talk. I could barely add anything in here.
Never mind. She brought her notebook, but I will say, I'll shamelessly plug myself. That I say that all the time. It's my greatest honor of my entire career was that here was an executive vice president who knows every possible agent in the city, and she picked me, and it's always to this day a great honor.
And if you're seeing this, we're actually in a home that Rachel helped us buy. Gorgeous. And still thrilled to this day, notwithstanding the talks in the market. We bought height of pandemic, and we renovated height of pandemic. And even so, I still remain bullish long-term because of my investment philosophy. We can talk about that, but we can take it whatever direction you want.
And yes, trust me. But I also wish I could clone her as a client, and David, of course. But anyway, so I have wanted to do this with Natalka for a long time because I don't do a lot of market talk on my podcast, primarily because there aren't a lot of people that I respect their opinion on it. But I feel like you and I could talk for days about it, and I just love your insights. And the fact that she brought her notebook with all her notes and her data, she would probably have a PowerPoint presentation if I let her right now, and you will eat it all up just like I would. But okay, so we want to kind of just talk about what we have seen in the market this year. And we were talking before this started just how I talk to clients all the time who will say to me, okay, they invite me to their home. They say, I want to sell our house. And we've heard. And it's so challenging for people to look from the outside into our industry because our whole industry is old data. Is rearview mirror information, TREB releases numbers a month out. I can talk to you about August numbers, which we'll touch on, which were really boring. They're done. Like we're now on the other side waiting for September numbers, which will be totally behind us once October. And October will probably be a totally different story. But I mean, not surprisingly, maybe surprisingly where I sit right now, but I went into 2023 saying, okay, they're calling for the sky to fall, Chicken Little, but I didn't buy it. I said, I think spring's going to be strong, and it was.
Yep.
Even with the fluctuations. And then summer hit. So, I mean, can you think back about what your prediction was for 2023 spring? What you thought it was going to be? I wish I had done it.
I have to do disclosure.
Oh, yes.
The reason why I look haggard is because I'm on mat leave. And there you go, I'm looking at this camera. I am on mat leave, and so these opinions are my opinions alone, not that of RBC and or Ojo. So just throwing that out there. So let's go back.
The cutest little baby
ever. Yes, exactly. Okay. So if you hear some screaming, it's not that I have a hostage upstairs, it's literally a child. So nonetheless, here's what I thought. Frankly, it would be worse than it was. And the reason,
I think a lot of people did.
A lot of people did. And the reason being is because I'm very conservative in how I think about the market. Generally, my overall view is 2025 is, we might see an improvement. We might see an improvement because that's when rates might actually start to drop down. And that's when 100% of mortgages are going to be coming due up for their renewals, which means that perhaps, certainly the delta will be higher. They'll be paying more than they had paid 5 years prior to or 3 years prior to. However, it won't be so much of a shock as the recent interest rates have been for those that had variables and those whose mortgages were getting renewed. So my thoughts were that in 2023, it will be a lot more quiet than people had anticipated, because I was also looking at a couple of variables in the trusty notebook. And certainly I can give you all of these charts as well. I'll send them over to Rachel.
We'll put them in the show notes.
We'll put them in the show notes. So a couple things. What makes me nervous about a market? What makes me nervous about a market is unemployment rates, okay, big one, and understanding how people are spending their money and their credit, right? So what we did see is a jump in credit card debts going up. Huge. Right? And then payday loans skyrocketing, and then finally auto loans skyrocketing as far as being not paid. So that's 90 days.
I was just going to say the biggest, scariest number, forget the house of price, forget interest rates, forget anything, was when we started to see the default in auto loans.
Correct.
That was huge.
And we're seeing an aggressive spike. What we're not seeing a spike in, though, are mortgages and lines of credit.
But I also think that, you know, if you break that down, and it's as concerning as it was,
yep.
I think that it was in line with what we saw in COVID. People were spending. Okay, fine. You can spend on a couch.
Right.
You can spend on a pair of shoes. Okay. But it's done. It's paid for. People got into, oh my God, I have all this money. I'm going to go out and I'm going to lease a Mercedes.
Yes.
I'm going to go lease a Porsche. If you can't afford that, you're still stuck in it. Right. And that was the difference of the overspend. And I hate to say it, and this is not shaming of the victim, but it was just bad decisions done by people. Yes. That's the reality. If you're going in and buying a home, you now have a bank, and this is where we will talk about loan to value ratio is, you know, you go into a Toyota, you go into a Porsche dealership and they're like, okay, they do a basic quick credit check. And they're like, you look like our next customer.
Because they have their own credit facilities within. They want you to go on credit.
They want you, very much like the bank wants you to take out a loan of credit. All of those things, they want you to do this. Okay, fine. So now but if you go and if you have bad credits, if you have that car, if you have not been in a job, if you are self-employed, the bank's not going to give it to you.
The bank's
so there were more checks and balances around a home than there were around.
This is exactly why I'm not concerned, and I did not think that, notwithstanding interest rates lately going up, which we know this, we've seen this rodeo.
She keeps saying they are, and I'm saying no.
But during this past year, so looking back, we're like, we know they're going to go up. We know that. Inflation continues to go up. Inflation does still continue to go up. Gas is going to go up. We're going to continue to see inflation as being problematic.
And by the way, because of, as we were talking before, things that are out of our control, out of our government's control.
Correct. So they have been for a while. Same with food prices. This has been the war in Ukraine. There are a lot of those pressures that are pushing prices up, which means...
As they drag Weston into court, I mean, for the love of God, honestly, it's like a circus. There's nothing they can do about it.
They can't, really, like, they can maybe squeeze their margin fine, but not so much so that we see a precipitous drop in costs of food or costs of anything. So tying it all with a bow, like what I looked at, I thought it's going to be a tough market. Now, why I never thought there was going to be a huge drop, however, where everyone's saying, defaulting, I can't afford this, for several reasons. Number one, the banks got very conservative in 2022, meaning that the loan to value, meaning how much of the loan is vis-a-vis the actual value of that property, they got even more strict. Meaning, rather than saying, hey, we'll give you a loan and you have only 5% equity in it, right? So we'll give you a loan for 95% of the value of the home. They said, no. It's now around 30, 25. Why is this important? This is important because if in fact prices do drop 10%, this does not mean that your mortgage will be greater than the value of your home. That's what happened in the 80s and the 90s.
Yeah.
Right? So in the 80s and 90s, we saw two things happen that we're not seeing happen right now. The first one is unemployment rates went through the roof. We're not seeing that. If we start to see unemployment skyrocket, which I didn't think was going to happen in 2023, that's when we start to see massive defaults and therefore massive drops in values of homes. We're just not seeing that happen. So as far as looking back and thinking about 2023, I didn't see that happening.
Well, no, people can't find people to work.
Exactly. And now, that's a bit of a nuanced conversation, because to work in like sectors where the type of person that would be working there
we won't go on that
would be a
tangent. Sorry,
renter
I shouldn't have,
versus,
yes.
But nonetheless, like, we saw strength that continued along, and also Canadian employment laws are such that getting rid of someone, like we saw in the U.S., is so much more expensive than just keeping them on. So we have a bit of a different market than the U.S. that everyone looks at as a forecasting model. So I thought it would stay quite quiet. It would stay quite boring. If anything, certain markets would see a decline. Like, for example, with back to office, I thought, do you know where we're going to see a problem? Likely in places that are an hour, 2-hour drive outside of the city of Toronto.
Listen, people are, and you hear, it's more of a headline. I think that trend, there are people that have moved back. There's no question.
Yeah.
I'm not totally convinced there were droves of people who left the city either. I think that was just about the Toronto Life front page and not necessarily about the actual. If you actually looked at the data, there was a Benjamin Tell did a great presentation on this. There were very few people who left the city.
Absolutely.
They thought about it. I think they thought about it, but no.
But not the same rate. And then those that did leave were kind of renters as opposed to owners as well.
Yeah, and I think it was temporary. It was like when the condo market, and I mean, you could not sell a condo at the beginning of COVID to save your life.
Mm-hmm. And then it bounced quite nicely up, right?
We should have all bought one then.
I know. I was thinking, we were talking about this. I should have listened to Rachel a lot more. I panicked. And
listen, we'll get into that now too also, but I think that something has shifted though. So I think that, and I talk, within my office, and I talk to other agents, and I think that there was talk amongst agents who've been in this business for 20, 30 years who were really feeling it this spring, who did not have the activity, and the activity was down. And then there was a shift. So I think that the summer came, and we had a seasonal shift. We had, I think,
just going to say that. Remember, it is summer.
Everybody freaked out and said, "Oh my God, it's so quiet. Nothing's happening." Nothing sells in the summer. We live in Canada. There's snow on the ground 7 months of the year.
How about Muskoka?
Literally.
Muskoka was slow.
So I think that the people that were hit the hardest with all of that is going on, grocery prices, with the interest rate, is the middle class. Of course. And even the upper middle class. We're not talking the luxury market. We're talking that those are the people that are buying a second property. Yeah. Listen, in Muskoka, $10 million cottages were still selling, $8 million cottages. Those, I mean, as I was saying to Natalka before this, of all of our listings right now, our luxury condo over $3 million has the most action on it. Well, and that is what is happening.
We saw that during COVID too. Remember, the luxury market typically is impervious to a lot of these big swings.
For sure.
Because it doesn't impact them. In fact, if you look at, again, back to loan to value ratios,
well, we'll see if they pass that luxury tax.
I was shocked as to how many people were buying in 2022 that were investors and second-time buyers, so they own property, who are having a loan to value of, so they had put down, let's say, 75% of the value of the home.
Before the interest rate started or after?
As they were going up when they were buying. So that means those that had money still buy, which suggests to me, to your point, luxury is going to be fine. It's those that are the folks and the people that, the first-time buyers, we are seeing them getting squeezed out of the market. This is not new news, but we're seeing it even more.
I've actually been saying it about a year and a half now, first time in my entire career, and I've been doing this over a decade, I think like 12, 13 years now. And I've always said to young buyers or young families, like, don't listen to the headlines, don't listen to your neighbor, don't listen to anybody. There's always pockets. We're always going to find you something. Okay, so you may not be able to live in Central Core. You may not be able to live in your parents' neighborhood. But the reality is there's always a place you're going to find. Right. And for the first time, I'm not saying that. And I think that as scary as pre-con, right. And I have not been a fan of pre-construction. So buying something before it's built, buying in, waiting, the entire contract is on the builder side. They can change up to 10% of the layout without asking you, without any repercussions. The materials, they can swap out nothing.
They can delay
closing, everything. Oh, and then you can also not actually once you have to pay rent until they
Correct.
do, they actually.
It doesn't go to your mortgage.
It does not go. So you could, if you're on an upper floor that doesn't get finished and you move in first and they're still for a year and a half finishing your condo, you are paying rent, not going towards your condo. So there's so many things. Oh my God, we could do a whole thing on condos, pre-cons. But I'm now understanding why they may be looking at it, because otherwise, how are you getting into the market?
Exactly.
A lot of people can't afford they can afford their monthly mortgage payments. They can't come up with the money, right?
Well, this is it. So
For a down payment. Sorry,
Yes.
finish that sentence. Yeah.
Oh, for the down payment piece.
Right, because I was just telling you, so I have a young buyer. We just bought a condo for him. He came to us last year and we were chasing our tail. This was before the interest rates came up. We're chasing our tail, multiple, like Young and Shepherd, everybody wants, it was great. There was lots of inventory, but we're still chasing our tail for the good ones. And, his first time buyer, a little nervous, didn't want to get into a bidding war, wanted to have a status certificate, condition, of course. And we were going to be lucky if we got a good 1+1 with a, good layout,
Right.
with one
Was
bathroom.
this a pre-con or this was resale?
No, this was a resale.
Okay.
He had to take a hiatus for job reasons. Anyway, he comes back to us. We're back in the market this spring. He's like, go slow, got a little miffed about something in his finances. We ended up being able to buy him a condo in this market that was 2-bedroom, 2-bath for the same amount of money in the same budget, with negotiation options, with a home inspection clause, with a status clause, with a financing. Like, we had every clause possible so that he could feel comfortable. If you can make the numbers work, and I love the trolls that come out and always say, us real estate agents want to shove people into things they can't afford.
No. It's the opposite, because then your reputation is ruined. But anyway,
well,
go ahead.
not everybody, but this is one of the best times for first-time home buyers to get in, because that delta.
If they can, as you said though, if they can make the numbers
And it's the
work.
same. If you're buying up, same thing. If you can make that work.
Yes. And so what I'm thinking is a couple things. That's my rule of thumb. My investment philosophy has always been, can I not only afford it now, but can I afford it if interest rates go up X, Y, Z%? And if it goes up higher than that, is it possible for me to save so that I can put a chunk of change down onto the mortgage so it becomes more manageable? Number one.
Or if I can't find a tenant for 6 months.
Yes.
Yeah.
My second philosophy is, think that you're going to hold this for 7 years, because it is very likely it's going to do this. If you thought the market was always going to do this, I'm going to sound like a jerk, take a history class, because you're going to see that it never
history
does
repeats
that.
itself. No, that
Never.
sweet spot of, and listen, there are exceptions, there's no question. And by the way, there are places in Canada where you can buy a house and own it for 10 years and it doesn't go up.
Oh yeah,
okay?
like the prairie areas.
Prairie areas, you can hold, like, there's no, we are so.
That's a rental cash flow market. That's a different type of game.
Totally different. But I'm just saying, I think that we've all gone into this market for the last 20 years going, you buy a property and it goes up.
Yes.
And there are places in Canada, they do not have that luxury.
Exactly.
Anyway, I mean, I could go on and on about that, but I think that you have to be able to say, I'm going to stay in it for 5 to 7 years. And I do. I say all my buyers, they're like, well, what about this? And what I said, think about your next 5 years. Yes. You are not going to leave that house if you can help it for the next 5 years. And then in 5 years, by the way, think about the world that we've lived in. COVID, everything that happens. Good Lord, they're calling for a cyber. Oh, who knows, right? Don't plan for past 5 years. We have no idea. You don't know.
I totally agree with that. And again, that type of mentality is a good one, because then you think, well, if we're thinking about having a kid, is this maybe the right home for us the next 5 years? You never want to be in position to sell something because you have to. That is the worst negotiating position possible.
It's painful. I always feel so, it hurts me when that has to happen with my clients.
Are you seeing that a little bit more?
I would say in the last 3 months, I've had more calls. And not about, oh my God, I'm underwater, I can't afford my payments. Like not a like the market is crashing, get me out situation. More of
life changes, would you say?
Life changes, but just I think the reality is that life is getting more expensive. By the way, I think you're also seeing it as a trend. Like you're seeing people going, I'm leaving Canada. Like Canada's just too expensive. like our housing prices, our grocery prices. I mean, I don't usually get like political, as you know, but our prime minister just flaunted a Nazi through Parliament. Our Doug Ford just got caught with his hand in the cookie jar.
Yeah.
And Olivia Chow thinks we have no problems in this city. The reality is that we have problems at every level of government in Canada, and it is causing people to think twice about leaving Canada.
And something that I think is, and there's that my hostage crying in the background, so apologies. We're just going to ignore that. But here's the challenge that I think we're going to see. So your debt service ratios have doubled, like as far as overall percentage of people that spend more than, I think it's 25% of their income on home, right? That is not, to me, feasible. Like, so as it continues to climb, I do believe, sorry to say this, interest rates at the very least are not going down for the foreseeable future.
I don't think so either. I mean, I know last year there were people who were taking predictions about whether they were going to go down like first quarter this year. The only reason that I push back on that comment, and not for any other reason, is I don't think the Bank of Canada knows. I think if you went to the Bank of Canada and said, when are you, like we went, I feel like every week to month, there's a different story. Like there was a point where the Bank of Canada came out and said, I think we're going to sit on the sidelines for the rest of the year. There was like sometime in July, they were like, you know what? I think we're going to sit on the sidelines. There were economists coming out.
They thought inflation was down though.
Right. No, but what I'm saying is they thought.
Good point.
And then all of a sudden, they completely got the employment rates wrong. Like not even close. Yeah. Okay. And then all of a sudden, inflation. I went from 1 week saying to clients, like, this is the talk, this is prediction, no interest or whatever, to the inflation going over 4. And I'm like, okay, sorry, no, like maybe. And it was like a week to week. So I'm not of a believer that we're going to see rates that we saw during COVID or before, because I think,
oh, that's not happening.
This may be a newsflash for some people out there. Those aren't coming back. They're not coming back. No. The Bank of Canada, just like they have inflation rate goals, right, they also have interest rate goals. They need to get inflation rate down first, then they will work on the interest rates. Right. But they also have goals. They can't leave it up here. No. We know that. But their inflation rate goal is 3%.
Something of that nature.
It's not 1, it's not 0.5, which we had, right? So we're going to hopefully get to a point where we're not in the 6 range, that we're in the 4 range.
I would say maybe happy balance. I think it's going to stay around 5, but it depends on what mortgage type you have as well. Like you're seeing closer to 7 now in some cases. So point being is that yes, it's getting more expensive. Bank of Canada is kind of showing its cards though. If you look at some of the analysis that they're putting forward, they are essentially, just go on Bank of Canada's website, you'll find a whole host of the types of studies that they're currently conducting, thinking about how things are going to work in 2025 and 6, if in fact they do increase rates. And in fact, their conclusion as of now, you know what, we can still do it and not totally break the backs of Canadians. And so that likely means that they may actually do it. I think so.
Well, they have to get the inflation down.
Correct.
They have to get inflation down. Will they take the housing debt out of that inflation rate? Because as Benjamin Tell said, if you take that out, we'd actually be at our goal right now.
Correct. And it's like how you slice that as well.
Mind-blowing.
It's how you slice as well. Because as you know, CPI was even changed as far as how it was calculated during the pandemic, because it didn't include things like computer costs, et cetera. So they had to adjust it to actually reflect current life prices and like what we actually spend our money on. It was overweighted in things like milk, and so on and so forth. So like it skews, like that is a very hairy data point that you have to be very careful as to how you digest it. I would, rather than using the CPI, look around at your life. Is it getting more expensive? The last time that you went out, was it more expensive than the last time beforehand? If you actually see those things happening, you know what? Then likely, forget what the CPI is saying or how things are being spun. It's likely getting more expensive, and there's likely going to be more efforts to suppress that level of demand. Now, here's the funny part that we keep on talking about: demand. Okay, demand certainly is I think changing.
What we said was we're talking about numbers. Right. We're talking about interest rates. We're talking about data. We're talking about the reality is that a house is 4 walls to raise your family. You need to buy a home to live, and we still have a housing crisis in Canada. And when immigration is still at an all-time high,
it will be higher.
They're not going to rural. Most people are not going to rural areas. Some are, but they're going to the city centers where they're going to find jobs, employment, infrastructure, healthcare. Not that we have healthcare, but I could do a whole podcast on that. Anyway, so Natalka and I are leaving Canada. But I mean, I think the reality is that is still what fueled the spring. I think right now, and I am talking many of my clients off a ledge right now. I still believe, and I am not saying this to just, make it sunshine and rainbows. I still believe, and I've been doing this long enough, that this is a blip, but the blips are different, right? Like, I think that we're in a point where people are like, do I want to do this right now? Like, I have lots of buyers who are like, okay, well, if there's a lot of ifs, okay, we'll go see this, but if very picky, very much not ready to pull the trigger. And I really have said to all of them, wait till the spring. Because I think
spring of 2024.
Yeah. Because it's still, again, our whole business is psychological, right? It's like, you've seen it. We have a spring market. We have massive snow in February. Yeah. What happens to the market? Nobody buys anything. Nope. You're like, what? It's spring market. It's February. Nope. It's massive snowstorms. No one wants to go out. So now you're like, okay, we've got...
But they don't attribute the snowstorm and people not wanting going out to the reason why no showings occurred. Now we have a crisis on hand. Right. Nobody wants to buy. Oh my God. Yeah, we saw that. Yeah.
Right. So now we're in fall and we're like, okay, their kids are back to school. I'm not moving my kids during school season. Winter's coming. By the time I get it on the market, whatever. Yeah. So fall, I think
Christmas overshadows that.
I haven't looked at the data for the last couple of years, but the overall trend was like a 70-30. 70% of all sales happened in spring, and then you had a bit of a trickle out of people.
COVID was the only time it kind of threw the numbers out of whack a little bit.
Right. I mean, although even in COVID.
Okay, you see some seasonality.
But right, you still saw I remember having 2 condos in the same building in Summerhill on the market in the dead of the summer. One of them had to stay on the market because they had to sell, they were moving. The other one, it was an investment property. We said, okay, we're gonna take it off, we'll relist it. We destaged it, relisted it, not staged in the fall. It sold, no problem. During the summer, she sold it, not at the price we wanted, but we still sold, but it took longer. Seasonality, even in COVID, happened.
Still impacts.
It still impacts.
That's fair. That's very fair.
No one wants to go house shopping. They want to be on a patio. They want to be on vacation. And by the way, which really shocked me, did you know this was the year that everybody went traveling? I thought it was last year. Everybody got over COVID this year.
I would agree. That's why prices went up like ridiculous as far as travel goes, which actually still again adds that adds to overall costs of living, right? And CPI and so on and so forth, because there's people that are coming here, which influences. So let's talk about the demand supply issue, because I think that's still fascinating.
Did I go on a tangent? I think I
No, that's fine. Let's go back. So just this past weekend,
pulling me back.
No. Just this past weekend, I ran into someone who works for the City of Toronto, specifically within the permitting offices. And we start talking about, what's, the housing market, as one always does in Toronto and Canada generally. And what he said to me was not shocking to you and I, but might be shocking to those that are listening. He said, you think it's expensive now. You just wait. We are just scratching the surface as far as costs, and here's why. He's like, the City of Toronto is behind 2 years behind for issuing permits for the mundane to the things that will actually be able to increase our housing supply. He's like, 2 years.
Why?
Just lack of people working. The systems in COVID were paper-based. They didn't have the infrastructure for it. People didn't have computers to take home.
I thought they had gotten better.
Oh God, still no. And so he said, and all that backlog, and because there's a lot of NIMBYism, not in my backyard, build somewhere, don't build on the green belt, but don't build beside me. Everyone should be living in the city but don't build beside me. So like it's this, or build in the country, but not beside my property in the country. Right. So you saw a lot of this a lot of this pushback. So whenever anyone's trying to build something, they're gonna have to face all of the pressures.
But still in Toronto, after they passed the whole...
Yes, they're still 2 years behind.
Still 2 years.
And he said, we are understating the type of housing and the amount of backlog that we have. It's not hundreds of thousands. It's not like 50,000. It's hundreds of thousands of units, homes that we're backlogged. What does that mean? Supply will get even more difficult vis-a-vis demand. The supply-demand ratio will get more difficult. So you wonder to yourself, if that's the case, okay, if we know 3 years from now, we're still going to have even less, the ratio is going to be even more aggressive, okay, no supply and still demand. Even if demand starts to constrict, supply is even more constricted, which always means higher price points.
So it's interesting. I think we would have crazy pricing right now if the interest rates weren't high. Because so one of the things that I've talked about on like on my videos, whatever, is this whole idea of buyers and sellers market. And so I've heard, or balance market, right? So it's like, this is determined based on months of supply that are in the market based on last month's sales. If you look at the supply overall in Toronto, we are still in what we would consider a seller's market, meaning we are selling at a faster pace than we have listed on the market. The only thing that you're seeing starting to balance out is the condo market. The condo market is starting to hit, and by the way, it's not even deep into the buyer's market, into the balance market.
It dances,
it's
and
just
on the
dancing
unit.
on the corner of it.
It depends on the unit, that skews the data.
But the interesting thing is, I agree with you, is that buyers are not acting as though it is because of the interest rates.
Because of the payment piece, right? So
100%. But
yes.
I think that that's what's interesting, and what shifted is that we still have lack of supply. I think that is going to continue. There's no question. And I think that I have clients right now who have come to me more than a handful and said, you know, we've got a growing family, we've got a young family, kids getting older, getting bigger, need more space, need a home office, need this, need that. We don't know if we want to sell and buy, because that's it's daunting for any family, or if we want to renovate. And I say, I think it's fantastic that you have me here. I think you need to go down this golden path. And I think you need to call your contractor. I've got contractors, I can refer you to builders, whatever that I trust will give you an honest opinion. And you need to really research both of them. And here's the delta between what you want and so you go out and you now farm that out to a contractor.
Right.
They all come back and say they want to buy.
And why is that? Yeah.
So there's a couple of things. One is the timelines. So you think it's daunting to get your house ready, to have it to photographed and have it staged and have to whatever. You want windows? You can go to Home Depot right now and get regular windows. If you want custom windows, 8 to 9 months. 8 to 9 months, okay? 8 to 9 months. So now you're waiting for your windows. You've got, going back to like costs even, not to go on a tangent, I had a young couple who called me, bought a house, lovely, like just by the skin of their teeth, got out of a condo, bought this house, every penny counts, and they had to do a little something to fix it up. And the handyman, I don't know what, like $500, and they were like, what? And I said, I know it's shocking for what you think that, I think it was like even just doing the recaulking on a tub, right? Like you buy something that's whatever. Yeah. It was like $200. Oh yeah. I said, there's like a meme going around now on social. It's like leaving your house costs $500. It's funny, but literally like I say to clients, I'm like, here's someone I trust. It's a trade. I use them. I want you to talk to them, tell them exactly, I will help, I'll advocate for you, whatever.
Rachel did that for
us.
us.
You have to ask the price. Do not assume. I assure you it will be double what you think it is, if not more. And not because they're trying to rip you off, but because that is how much things cost now.
Yes.
So it's that. I think people
Plus labor in that area, gone.
No, I have this beautiful cottage up in Muskoka by Port Carling. And I had an unrepresented buyer call me and say, we wanted to see it. So I took them out and they said, well, we don't know. Maybe we're going to buy a lot and we're going to build. And I said, okay, like how much do you, they're like, well, we read that, it could be like around $300, $400 to build a square foot. And I'm like,
in Port Carling?
No, forget it, Port Carling. Where are you going to build for $300 a square foot?
Nowhere.
Where?
Nowhere.
Right. So now you're
It
looking
hasn't been
at
for a while though.
So again, headlines, wrong article. It doesn't matter, but I think that if you're looking at how long it'll take, how much money it's going to cost you, it's a bigger headache than potentially finding something and just biting the bullet for a short period of time for longer term gain.
I'm curious, back to the condo market, a big indicator to me of where things will head off for the end of 2023, assignments.
You know what?
Have you seen them? What are you
know
seeing?
Signal. You know Signal. So there's a group. There's letting everybody in on a secret. So Signal is an app that agents are on, of which we can text and say we're looking for this for a client, or we have a coming soon. To gather attention for it. But they also now have a group for assignments. So I had a client who said to me, they're like, "Oh, I heard assignments." They don't want to lose their shirts on it. So they're trying to sell it, but it's not like you're getting $500 a square foot for it, so you want to grab it up. I mean, there may be here and there, but first of all, I can show you the thread. There aren't that many assignments.
Right.
And they're not this great deal. I think people are trying.
So you know what that says to me? That says to me that things will still be, I don't want to say heated, but this cataclysmic drop that everyone's waiting for, I don't think is going to happen.
I don't know. I think they've been calling for a burst in this bubble burst in the market for 20 years. They really have. Specifically for 10 years, they've really, anytime.
I thought so.
No.
I was always like, maybe
I know
this is
you were
gonna be
like,
it.
it's coming, and I'm like, it's not coming. And I really feel like it would need another catalyst. There needs to be another catalyst to cause it, because even just during COVID, I was getting nervous. We were in those meetings and I was like, and they were talking about the double-digit growth every month. And I'm like, okay. So everyone's like, this is amazing. And I'm like, no, it's not amazing. No. This has, literally, I told my client, I'm like, this has to stop. Yeah. It literally has to stop because it's really freaking me out. We can't continue like this.
So what do you think that the straw could possibly be? What are you keeping your eye on for 2024? I have my indicator. I have a few things. Go ahead.
No, I really think what you said, and I don't know what the catalyst would be, but it would need to be this unemployment factor.
It's in unemployment. That's the only thing
That's the only thing. But the thing is that it's not a sector. It's right across the board. And what would cause that unemployment right across the board?
Possibly a lot of commercial loans going bad. That's what I'm thinking. It's commercial loans, but I don't think it's going to happen in Canada. That's more likely to happen in the U.S. We have a very different system. If the office markets continue to remain vacant, but I think there's got to be such a constriction in demand for stuff that we start to see companies saying we can't afford to have people anymore to be working. I don't know if that's going to happen.
I don't know if it's going to happen across the board. So Toronto Star just did it.
Right.
They just closed all their community newspapers. Yeah. For what it's worth, those things were dead years ago, right. And that's not so shocking. The sad part was
how many people were employed in that?
There were a lot.
How many did they let go?
So I'm making this up. I don't remember, but it was a decent. I want to say there were 500 people. Remember,
I'm thinking thousands of people.
No.
500 is still not that crazy.
It's still not that. But I think that would be the kind of thing that would need to happen,
across all sectors.
You know what would need to happen? And this is I don't want to sound like sci-fi or conspiracy theory. AI would have to take over. I really think that something that would hit across the board to cause a serious unemployment number.
That's what I'm looking at, because what happened in the first time in history in which unemployment did not impact housing market was during COVID. And the reason being is because there was a sharp increase in unemployment and the government doled out money. And that allowed for rents to be paid. So this is where I'm getting nervous. This is one thing I have to admit is making me a little bit nervous. So first of all, consumer sentiment for 2024 onward is very high, meaning that almost everybody believes.
Really?
Yeah. Everyone believes the market's going to continue to go up, the housing market, particularly in GTA. We're seeing house flippers getting back into the market as well.
I think it's going to be steady. Here's my official prediction. I think that this is a blip in the market. I think 2024 And by the way, I have no idea. And I don't think the economists know.
No.
I think that the spring season will be steady, not amazing, not flat. I think it will be steady. I think people will come out again and they will buy because everybody buys in the spring and everybody does what everybody else does.
Right. Here's the only thing that kind of makes me nervous.
Okay.
So,
by the way, lots of things make
payday loans have gone up. So, but who cares? They're payday loans.
But hold
right?
on a second. Are those the people that own houses?
They rent, and this is where it starts. So, if you are somebody who is a small-time investor, and you have a property, and that person, I think we're seeing investors getting into the market, but it is renters that could potentially start the push of people dumping more properties. This is what happened in what was it, the 90s and the 80s, right? People bought, market's gonna go up always, shit interest rates, oh my God, unemployment, oh my God, now I can't even rent this place out to save my life.
Right.
And that's the crux. Do I believe that's gonna really happen? I think we have so much more infrastructure in place as far as supporting tenants that I don't really think that might actually happen.
And I think the question is what? Because if I have a bungalow, I'm not dumping it, right? And if I do, I sell it and the demand is so high.
If I can't afford it.
No, but okay, so let's say I have a bungalow, it's a rental property. If I sell it, there's demand for it. I don't have to fire sale it. If I have a 1-bedroom condo, so I think again,
asset class is important.
Right. So again, it's a matter of the guy that's renting my 450 or girl 450 square foot condo with no parking down at 4 York. Yes, maybe. But like the people that are renting the 2-bedroom, they go down to one. I don't know. I think it's very specific.
I would agree, specific. However, caveat, and this is what I wonder, if hysteria starts in one part of the overall market, does it impact the rest? I don't know. Because then the question I also have is,
well, the media will make sure it does.
Yes. Okay, so let's say all these people that are defaulting on their payday loans and their auto loans stop paying rent. Well, okay, so what? Well, let's think about this. If we're getting how many hundreds of thousands of people that are economic class immigrants coming into predominantly Toronto, Montreal, Calgary.
And what's the stats? They buy a house within their first 5 years?
Correct. I don't know, and that's the big thing. So if in fact, let's say, you see those defaults happen and people aren't, will that just be made up by those that are coming in that are the economic class that come with money, right? They're not coming like my parents did with nothing in their pockets.
Oh, no.
They're coming with something. So
the class that's coming through now is very, very different than our parents, for sure.
So that goes to say that the only thing, like if I were, an investor or if I were a first-time home buyer, I would be looking at employment rates and using that as something to at least help me understand where everything happens to be going. Because unlike COVID, I don't think the government's going to shell out more dough. If employment skyrocket.
They don't have it.
They don't have it.
And that is why, by the way, I think the Bank of Canada has to be very, very conservative.
They're working with the Bank of Canada is also, again, I would encourage you to go to their website. They have some working committees, some of which are with the banks as well. And
Sorry, I don't mean to roll my eyes. Not at you,
at the very least, what we know though, is that we know that the banks are speaking to the Bank of Canada. If the banks are concerned, I'm suspecting this is not RBC's perspective. This is my own view. I'm not speaking on behalf of them, blah, blah, blah. I suspect since the banks are involved, they're very sophisticated, they will help pull the reins back on the Bank of Canada.
Okay, we have to close this on a positive note because that was all, I'm like, it's going to be fine.
Oh no, it's positive. It's positive.
So in your handy dandy notebook over there, what would you say would be a good news story? What would you say
so many.
Let's pick one to go into 2024. Something that you feel will be a good news story in 2024.
Oh, a good news story in 2024.
Or even this year. I don't want to put you on the spot.
I would say, so there are quite a few good news stories. I think consumer sentiment, the overall view of consumers will be, as far as the housing market not going into bubble territory, will actually be consistent, meaning that we're not going to be seeing the average buyer saying, I got to get out, or the seller being like, it's over. We're going to continue to see there to be strong sentiment in the GTA specifically.
I agree.
In the GTA. I also do believe that demand is not going to be eviscerated. It's not.
I just don't think it's possible.
I don't think so.
No. I mean, if you cut off immigration, I think that it could definitely,
for sure.
I think they could definitely get it balanced a little bit more and get housing for everybody. But I mean, anyway, we could do a whole other thing about how they let all those students in and didn't have housing for them. Anyway, we said we were going to be positive. Anyway, yes. I feel like we can do a 2.0 of this very soon. Maybe we'll do an early 2024 prediction.
I would like to do that.
I want to thank you for being on this.
Thank
we really
you,
could have
Rachel.
talked for 2 more hours.
Absolutely.
Thank you. It was amazing.
Always good. And again,
good.
There are good news stories here, but I think the moral of the story is buy within your means.
And I always say is that...
expecting.
Yes. So buy within your means.
And you'll be fine.
Don't read the headlines or don't believe in the headlines or read more than the headlines. And because sometimes the headlines gets backtracked in the actual article.
Yeah.
And then I would always say, the house always wins.
Oh,
you need to move now. You need to move now. Make the right decision for you at that time.
Exactly. High five, Rachel.
Thank you.